Is facing a 35% tariff on all goods that are not KOSMA compliant. Plus, there are some sectoral.
President Donald Trump has opened a new front in his global trade strategy, a sweeping set of tariffs on dozens of countries. But Canada, America's closest neighbor and longtime economic partner, is squarely in the crosshairs. Under the new policy, Canada faces a 35% tariff on all goods that do not meet KOSMA standards. The updated North American trade rules, plus extra taxes on key sectors like steel, lumber, and farm products.
Now, the tariffs have helped. It's given us not only the money, it's billions, trillions of dollars of money, but it gives us great power over enemies.
Trump says these tariffs are a win for America. In his words, they've brought in billions, trillions of dollars and given Washington powerful leverage in dealing with other nations. For him, tariffs are not just about raising money. They're a tool to force other countries to negotiate on U.S. terms. It's a high-pressure tactic designed to protect American jobs and industries.
1 year ago, they said your country was dead, and now you have the hottest country anywhere in the world. We do. We have the hottest country in the world right now. The tariffs have helped.
This approach fits Trump's broader political playbook. With the 2026 midterm elections ahead, showing toughness on trade plays well with his supporters and reinforces his America First image. The message is simple. American workers come first, even if that strains relationships with allies.
Carney is standing by retaliatory tariffs, though it appears unlikely new countermeasures are in the works.
For Canada, the impact is immediate. Prime Minister Mark Carney has kept current retaliatory tariffs in place, but avoided adding more, signaling a preference for negotiation rather than escalation. His goal is to limit economic harm while keeping the possibility of a deal alive. Still, the damage is real. Companies are losing contracts, tourism between the two countries is falling, and supply chains on both sides of the border are being disrupted.
About Canada's being a 51st state, and the governor, Governor Trudeau, and all those kinds of conversations that's come out of the White House has hurt her standing in Canada, and that's a shame.
The situation is also becoming political. Comments from the White House about Canada as the 51st state, whether serious or not, have angered many Canadians. That rhetoric undermines trust and raises questions about the long-term stability of one of the most integrated economic partnerships in the world.
By the way, our trade relationship is quite equitable. Canada may have a little advantage on exports. We have an advantage in services. We also have a great tourism industry, so it's been a win-win relationship.
Even in the U.S., Trump's approach is not without critics. Congressman Don Bacon of Nebraska, a Republican, has openly opposed tariffs on Canada. His state's farmers and meat processors rely heavily on Canadian trade, especially for livestock supply. Bacon argues that the U.S.-Canada relationship has historically been balanced. Each side has advantages in different sectors, and that these tariffs risk hurting American businesses as much as Canadian ones.
So we've seen the supports for steel industry, the supports for softwood lumber, but also just preparing Canadians to be like, there's going to be some volatility here, but we need to continue to invest in Canada. We need to focus on Canadian jobs and find other partners. So focusing on Europe, focusing on Asia, other partners that are more reliable.
Some analysts believe the real goal is not just fixing trade terms, but using economic pain as leverage ahead of the next USMCA renegotiations. By making the status quo costly, the thinking goes, Canada might be pushed into accepting a deal more favorable to Washington. But that strategy carries risks. Ottawa is already looking to deepen ties with Europe and Asia, reducing its dependence on the U.S. If that shift accelerates, America could lose influence with a key ally at a time when unity is crucial for handling global challenges from Russia's war in Ukraine to rising tensions with China.
Integrated manufacturing, and we have a very integrated economy. So
the irony is that both economies benefit enormously from cooperation. Goods often cross the border multiple times before reaching consumers. Tourism flows in both directions, and on defense, Canada remains a vital NATO partner. Damaging this relationship over tariffs could weaken a partnership that has served U.S. interests for over a century.
Our economic relationship, and I don't see a single purpose being filled here.
In the short term, Trump's tariff campaign may create political momentum and bargaining power. But with Canada, the costs are shared, economically, politically, and strategically. The challenge now is whether Trump can secure a better deal without breaking the relationship, or whether this moment will be remembered as the start of a lasting divide between two of the world's closest allies. Trump's tariff gamble and the U.S.-Canada rift. The relationship between the United States and Canada is entering one of its most strained periods in decades. At the center is President Donald Trump's latest round of tariffs and a rare public split within his own Republican Party. Nebraska Congressman Don Bacon has broken ranks, warning that a policy aimed at boosting the U.S. economy is instead damaging one of America's most reliable partnerships. Trump's new tariff package hits dozens of countries, but Canada, the closest U.S. neighbor and a deeply integrated trade partner, is among the hardest hit. All goods that do not meet KOSMA standards, the updated North American trade rules now face a 35% duty. On top of that are sector-specific tariffs on steel, lumber, and agricultural products. Trump has framed this as a winning strategy. Tariffs, he says, have revived the U.S. economy, delivered billions, trillions in revenue, and given Washington powerful leverage. To him, tariffs are not merely taxes. They're a high-pressure negotiating tool to protect American jobs and industry. Politically, this fits Trump's broader America First playbook. With the 2026 midterms on the horizon, taking a tough line on trade appeals to his base, reinforcing the image of a president who puts U.S. workers first, even if it risks friction with allies. But the question is whether the short-term leverage he seeks is worth the potential long-term costs. For Don Bacon, the answer is clear. Representing a state that relies heavily on Canadian trade, particularly in agriculture and meat processing, Bacon calls the U.S.-Canada relationship equitable. Canada may have a slight advantage in goods exports, but the U.S. enjoys the upper hand in services and tourism. His warning is blunt. Tariffs are already leading to canceled contracts, declining tourism, and disrupted supply chains. When we hurt each other, nobody comes out ahead, he says. Nebraska offers a case study in the fallout. Canadian customers are pulling back, and cross-border shipments of livestock and other goods have slowed. For local companies, these losses are not easily replaced, and the damage isn't just economic. Rhetoric from the White House referring to Canada as the 51st state has sparked anger and eroded goodwill, something Bacon sees as corrosive to a relationship built over a century. In Ottawa, Prime Minister Mark Carney is responding with a mix of restraint and preparation. He has kept existing retaliatory tariffs in place but resisted escalation, signaling a willingness to negotiate. At the same time, his government is pushing to diversify Canada's trade portfolio, deepening ties with Europe and Asia. The goal is clear: reduce dependence on the U.S. and strengthen bargaining power over the long term. Domestically, Carney has maintained political unity across party lines, with Canadians rallying against what they view as unfair treatment from Washington. The broader stakes extend beyond trade. The U.S.-Canada partnership underpins NATO cooperation, continental defense, and shared border security. If economic trust erodes, it could spill into other areas of collaboration. At a time when the West faces major challenges, from Russia's war in Ukraine to rising competition with China, Canada remains a vital ally in both economic and strategic terms, and alienating it could weaken the Western alliance. Some analysts suspect that Trump's real aim is to use tariffs as leverage ahead of the next USMCA renegotiations, making the current arrangement costly enough to push Canada toward concessions. But this is a high-risk bet. If Ottawa accelerates its pivot toward other partners, the U.S. could lose influence over a neighbor that shares its longest undefended border. Both economies gain enormously from cooperation. Integrated manufacturing chains, cross-border tourism, and mutual investment have supported prosperity on both sides. Jeopardizing that for a short-term bargaining chip could backfire, delivering neither lasting economic benefits nor political advantage. In the short run, Trump's tariff offensive may rally his supporters and put pressure on Canada. But in the long run, the costs, economic, political, and strategic, are shared. The real test will be whether the president can secure a better deal without permanently weakening one of America's most enduring alliances. If not, this moment may be remembered less as a tactical victory and more as the beginning of a lasting divide between two nations that have long stood side by side. Trump's tariff offensive and the Nebraska fallout President Donald Trump's latest tariff policy is sending shockwaves through America's agricultural heartland. At the center of the storm, Nebraska, a state whose economy, businesses, and supply chains are tightly bound to Canada, one of the United States' most important trading partners. What makes this story even more striking is that one of Trump's own party members, Congressman Don Bacon, is publicly breaking ranks to warn of the damage. The tariff package applies to dozens of countries, but Canada stands out. Under the new rules, all goods that do not meet KOSMA standards, the updated North American trade framework face a 35% duty. Added to this are sector-specific tariffs targeting industries like steel, lumber, and key agricultural products. Trump has defended these measures as a win for the U.S., claiming they have revived the economy, brought in billions, trillions of dollars, and strengthened Washington's hand in negotiations. For him, tariffs are more than taxes. They are a tool to force foreign governments, even allies, to strike deals on U.S. terms. This approach is pure America first. It resonates with Trump's political base ahead of the 2026 midterm elections, projecting the image of a president willing to protect American jobs at any cost. But that cost is becoming clearer in places like Nebraska. Nebraska's economy is deeply tied to agricultural trade with Canada. The state's pork and beef producers depend on an integrated supply chain that stretches across the border, from livestock imports to processing facilities to final sales. When tariffs drive up costs or trigger retaliatory measures, the chain begins to break. Local companies are reporting lost Canadian customers and canceled contracts. For many, these relationships took years to build and can't simply be replaced. The tourism sector is feeling the pinch too, with fewer Canadian visitors spending in local communities. The disruptions are more than numbers on a spreadsheet. They translate into reduced revenues, potential layoffs, and growing uncertainty about the future. In an interconnected supply chain, a slowdown in one link reverberates through the entire network, from farms to processors to exporters. For a state like Nebraska, where agriculture is a cornerstone, that's a serious economic threat. Congressman Don Bacon has made his opposition clear. He describes the U.S.-Canada trade relationship as balanced. Canada may export more goods, but the U.S. dominates in services and enjoys substantial tourism benefits. Bacon argues that the current tensions, compounded by White House rhetoric referring to Canada as the 51st state, are eroding goodwill and trust. His prescription is to use the USMCA KOSMA framework to fix specific problem areas rather than applying broad punitive tariffs. Coming from a Republican in a politically competitive district, his dissent is unusual and underscores the depth of concern in his home state. In Ottawa, Prime Minister Mark Carney is walking a careful line. He has kept existing retaliatory tariffs but has chosen not to escalate further, signaling that Canada is open to negotiation. At the same time, his government is pursuing new trade agreements with Europe and Asia to reduce dependence on the U.S. This dual strategy is designed to shield the Canadian economy in the short term while strengthening its bargaining position in the long run. Domestically, Carney has maintained political unity, with public opinion strongly backing his stand against Washington's pressure. The stakes go beyond economics. The U.S.-Canada relationship underpins continental security, NATO cooperation, and joint border management. If trust erodes, it could spill over into defense and security collaboration. For Nebraska, losing Canada as a major market would be a cautionary tale about the risks of over-reliance on a single trading partner. For the U.S. as a whole, alienating a neighbor that shares the world's longest undefended border could weaken both economic and strategic positions. Some analysts see Trump's move as a calculated gamble, applying maximum pressure now to secure a more favorable USMCA renegotiation. But if Canada accelerates its pivot to other partners, the U.S. could lose influence in both trade and geopolitics. In that case, the short-term political gain from tariffs may come at the expense of long-term national interests. Nebraska's experience is a reminder that in trade policy, the ripple effects are real. Tariffs may rally political support and create bargaining leverage, but they also risk harming the very communities they are meant to protect. The real question is whether this strategy will deliver the better deal Trump promises, or leave behind economic scars and a weaker alliance with one of America's closest friends.